are mucus-free. We are mucus-free. We are mucus-free. We are mucus-free. We are mucus-free.
All right, brothers and sisters, I have a real treat for you today. My good friend, Steve Prussack, is in the house, as they say. Steve Prussack is founder of Juice Guru, a movement dedicated to spreading the message about juicing for healthy living. He is also the founder of the accredited Juice Guru Institute, which offers courses in juice therapy and health education, and trains juice therapists around the world. With his wife Julie, he co-authored the #1 best-selling book on Amazon entitled Juice Guru: Transform Your Life by Adding 1 Juice a Day. He is also the author of the Complete Idiot's Guide to Juice Fasting. Steve hosted the world's first health-related podcast, Raw Vegan Radio, back in 2006, and he has recently launched his latest podcast, Juicingpreneur Radio, a few weeks ago, which is aimed toward helping others grow their own business. Without further ado, welcome Steve Prussack.
Thank you, Professor Spira. Are we talking juice today?
Oh yeah. Well, you're always talking juice. You know, I had my orange juice this morning because I had recently got a box of oranges, and the oranges have been pretty decent this year. So I keeping it kind of simple, just good old fashioned orange juice.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited to be here. I love the work you're doing and carrying on the great work of Professor Arnold Ehret, and just that's part of my journey. So I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, most definitely. So to get you introduced to people in my community that might not know who you are, we'll start from, where are you from and kind of what was your upbringing like?
So I'm living in California now. I grew up in New Jersey, and back in the 80s, and I grew up standard American diet. By the time I was a frat boy in college and just living the worst life ever, drinking alcohol, smoking weed, anything to feel alive and happy in the boring state of New Jersey. And health was the last thing from my radar. I remember in college making fun of the vegetarians, like the people in line, like, what are they doing? Like, how could they not eat meat? Like, what is going on with that? And we'd make fun of them, and I had no idea that, getting out of college, I'd be, overweight, borderline obese, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And it was just no energy. I was working on Wall Street as a stockbroker at the time. I couldn't even sit up behind my desk. I'd be slouching by midday. I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without panting. I was smoking over a pack of cigarettes a day. And in my early 20s, I felt like an old man. And that was really the impetus, that and depression, just feeling depressed, laying in bed, watching infomercials. And it was Jay Kordich, the juice man, on a late night infomercial talking about juicing, that I was like, you know what, maybe I should just give that a try. And because I hated fruits and vegetables, I never even ate a salad, really. Iceberg lettuce and beef steak, tomato, and cucumber was my salad, drowned in bacon bits, croutons, and French dressing. Fast food every weekend. I was the epitome of junk food, unconscious, and all the other things that come with it. So it was the juicing that turned it around. And I've done all these other things in Raw Vegan. I'd love to talk to you more about that and that whole movement, which I think is so crazy and off-center for what it should have been. And the vegan movement and what's gone on in that movement. I've gravitated through these movements because it was all about Ehret and his philosophy that I always believed in. And so we went back to juicing to educate, because for me, juicing turned it around. And I thought if more people could start getting juice in their body, then maybe they can transition easier and do more fasting and all those other things, because it was the fasting that changed my life. Nicotine came out the tips of my fingers during one of my first fasts. The fingertips cracked. It smelled like a dark tar soot. And I was like, well, that's what ignited the passion to want to do this full time and make my life of it.
Yeah, 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 beautiful. And you had said, I think I read you had one of your teachers you call you a buffoon, or they was kind of making fun of you, and you just said, like, talk a little bit about that period, before you really, just emotionally, where were you at before you got into this lifestyle?
I was like the epitome of a bad student. It was a struggle to even sit in school, elementary school. I was more creative, and they don't honor that anyway. Mm-hmm. So to sit there and read a chalkboard all day, I just was miserable in school, and I became like the class clown, and I'd be the guy that came in with different props, a rubber hand that would fall off or something, and the teachers hated me, and I always got in trouble, and I would be suspended, in school suspension, all those things. And the teacher, one teacher called me a buffoon. They basically told me I wasn't going to amount to anything. And, a lot of the words that we hold on to, and if we let it. And, I just never thought I'd be able to turn it around. And it was because of this lifestyle that later in life, once I started the juicing and getting the right food in my body, I got into a master's program, got my master's degree. I was class president. I was, an honor student, I was a C and D student back then. I was, what they called a loser, and I'd never, no one really thought I'd amount to much. My parents, I think, were just kind of resigned to let him get through, C's are good. That was the kind of student I was.
Right. Yeah. And so you watch the
I wasn't like you, let's say.
Well, I mean, we have, something just lit a fire under me to just like, okay, everybody expects me to not be able to do this, so I'm gonna go all the way. I'm gonna just take it all the way in academia. So yeah. What was your first juicer? So how far after, when you were watching infomercials, did you actually take initiative, take action, and be like, all right, I'm gonna do this?
So yeah, and then I remember I convinced my mom. I was like, I want to do this. I want to get a juicer. I want to get a good juicer. I want to get the kind of juicer where I wanted to go right in and do a cleanse. So I was like, let me try to get some of these toxins out of my body, because I started reading and all that, and just learning more about it, not just wanting to drink a juice, but to try a juice cleanse. So I ended up getting a really good juicer at the time. It was a graduation gift from my grandparents, chipped in with my parents, and they got me a really good juicer, a Tri-Best Green Star. So the juice would last up to 3 days if I made a juice in there. And I remember that first cleanse, I was probably about 21 or 22, and it was the hardest thing I ever did. It was 3 days, and I thought I was starving. I thought I couldn't even get through this, and I just didn't know. And it was effective, but we all know that the deeper we go with the cleansing, and the more hardcore we get with it, the more we've learned along the journey. It's funny, when I wrote The Idiot's Guide to Juice Fasting, I've learned so much more about juicing and juice fasting at this point. And a lot of these vegan doctors, they just have it all wrong, and everyone's afraid of the fruit juices. And I know I'm getting off on a tangent with that, but let's just stick to the question. And yeah, that was the first juicer, and that was the first cleanse, 3 days, and that's what started the transition to then systematically getting rid of meat, dairy, the mucus forming foods, and but still being a vegetarian pus eater, and then a vegan pus eater, and then a raw food pus eater for 2 years. And that's when I did Raw Vegan Radio, and that was in 2004 that I started that. And it was just wanting to stay the path, interviewing the leaders in raw food, and then doing a raw food summit, Raw Palooza back then. We had 80 speakers on that.
Wow.
So I was really immersed in the movement and the philosophies, and they were off in so many ways, and it's no wonder I failed, and so many other people did too. Yeah,
that's something that I observed because I was kind of disconnected from that whole thing until get going online and starting to see some of the social media. Because when in those days there was MySpace, I was about it. There wasn't Facebook, right. None of that yet, and that was coming from only having really dealt with the mucus diet healing system and not having all those other influences, which I'm happy I was able to do that, where I didn't have to break bad habits and things. But I just saw how there was just such a lack of transition discussion. There was authoritarianism in some cases. I was just talking about that a minute ago with someone about some of the groups that would just delete people immediately if they said the wrong thing. You just boop, you're deleted. No teachable moment. No say, hey, maybe you should think about it this way. It's nope, you're out. And if you don't toe the line. And so I was just very uncomfortable with that whole scene. And so I just stayed out of it, just sort of observed it from afar, tried to create our own environment with the Mucus-free Life and Mucus's Diet forum, where we tried to be the antithesis of that, where it was like, look, people post things I disagree with. We can have a conversation about it. I don't have to just take it down immediately and kick you out just because we don't have the same opinion. I just hate that. But you were like immersed in. You were seeing the whole thing. I was immersed
because I'm here in California. I was going to the parties with David Wolf and all those guys in San Diego, right? Right when Nature's First Law came up, and it was, there were some good things, but it was a lot of shaming, and a lot of negativity. And like you said, authoritarian and just, this way or no way, no transition, lots of nuts, lots of avocados, and, and not a lot of cleansing, not a lot of talking about fasting, not a lot of talk about enemas or any of the important things to first get clean. That is the reason so many people fail on it. Just not cleaning the constipation. I think Ehret, when he talks about constipation, it's like so many of us are constipated, and it's even now, like when I fall off and I get back on, I realize how constipated. I'll do a nice columna, like a 5-gallon columna with my columna board and lemon juice in there. And I'm just like, even eating, mucus lean and mucus free, still there's buildup, until we can really get that cleaned out. So that's been part of my transition, just, being completely regular, going to the bathroom an hour after, that you're working right.
Yeah. And that's
we'll talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a thing that people, they don't understand the transition and how it works. They want to try to, some of the folks talking about the raw food, they'll criticize it, saying, "Oh, or you're just trying to make excuses or mess around," But then 2 years later, they're, eating rice at 4:00 or something. It's like, well, wait a minute, where's all your raw at this point? Well, we changed it to raw till 4. No, you skipped over the transition. We already have a transition diet methodology. You didn't have to create something new.
Well, Ehret comes when you're ready, because I think when I first read that book, it was hard to get through. I was like, I get some of this and some of it, but when you like your course, when I immersed myself in your course and really, I constantly read the book over and over, just because I feel like every time I get more out of it, and it really holds up like nothing else out there. There's so much confusion with who to follow, and we've been, I've worked with lots of doctors to back the brand that I do, to our certification program. We've got Dr. Cousins, Gabriel Cousins, one of our advisors, Joel Fuhrman, who actually did a water fast at the beginning of his career and kind of knows the benefits of fasting. But I tried to bring in doctors that at least get it, unlike in the vegan movement, like Dr. Esselstyn or Rip Esselstyn or any of those guys, or McDougall, who are really against juicing and speak out against it, and even Dr. Michael Greger, who calls juicing a travesty. And so we have an uphill battle with the work we do, but there's the trends, there's the medical medium with celery juice, and he's reaching millions of people with just getting them on celery juice, and we're like, yeah, that's good, but we can take it to the next level with our juicing, and let's not get stuck in any of these philosophies. People love the leaders, they love one voice that somehow markets to them, and they'll get stuck. So we're just trying to wake people up, like you are. It's a journey to wake up.
Definitely, yeah. It's interesting how things get the way they get, and with the misinformation and fake news and just and like you said, these leaders, the strong arm leaders that like this is how it is, and everybody, and folks have to follow it. Whereas, my approach had always been to I challenge people to study for themselves. It's like I'll say a few things like, hey, did you ever think about this and that? But, you don't have to believe me. I'm not going to try to sell you on just believe me. I will try to sell you on study. Like, check these books out. Go, do your own research and discover it for yourself. And but yeah, there was a lot of that kind of following and just do what I say, not as I do kind of thing. And yeah, that was it's interesting, and it's been transitioning into almost something else now. I can't really tell what, but it's doing something right now where it's different than it was. And
well, you mean the raw food movement itself?
Yeah, it's doing something. I can't really say what it is, because some of those folks that were really prominent 5 years ago and some of those communities that were prominent then are much less. I mean, some of them have split up and divided and went in different directions, and they don't have the kind of, they were kind of a fad, they don't have that kind of influence that they once did. And then, even some of the books that were the quintessential books, it's like the authors of books have found shame, or things have happened that weren't good. Yeah. And I'm not going to name any names at this moment, but everybody knows I'm talking. Well, the people that know what we're talking about. So the thing is, I think it does give us an opportunity to do with the work that we're doing to kind of give that alternative and say, hey, we're over here. We've been here this whole time, but we're not forcing anything on you. If you resonate with this information, come on over, And
yeah, because I remember, like, I was at those longevity conferences that David Wolf and team were putting on. They brought Raw Vegan Radio in as a sponsor, so we'd always have a booth there. And I remember seeing how it started to change when they started bringing in Frank Giglio, and he was talking about raw meat. And they started bringing in some other, I forget his name, but someone else in the paleo movement who was teaching about. And I was like, wait a minute, it's called Raw Vegan, first of all. Like, where are we going now with it? And they were going like the wrong direction completely.
Yeah.
It's always about the vegan part. There is a compassion part. There's a reason to not eat meat on top of it. And also the destructive value to our body, all the reasons. It made zero sense how that transitioned too.
Yeah.
That was a few years back though.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because there was, and I'd kind of predicted that we were going to see more of that, because when I was looking at folks that were trying to become fruitarian, and it was like real, 2012, 13, and 14. I mean, everything's like raw fruitarian, overnight, doing 40-day fast, 40-day water fast. It was like, it was just this level of extremism, and there was a lot of people on it. And people tend to think that something is valuable based on how many people is there, as opposed to just objectively analyzing and seeing like, well, what is this? It's like, oh, there's a lot of people over there. That must be cool. And I was like, man, this is heading for disaster, because we're going to be seeing some people aren't going to make it. We're going to have some people probably pass away, because they're not using the methodology, just as like in the Mucus diet book, where people did too long a fast and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to see that. We're going to see people that go to the opposite extreme, and that's where they're like, okay, we have all this raw concept, but we're starting to fall apart. Let's eat raw meat. It was like that was the logic, as opposed to, well, maybe we should transition and let's take a look at some plant-based cooked food. It was like, instead of that, it's like, no, we're going all raw meat, raw goat's milk. And yeah, I've even seen, I was surprised even seeing a few people that were supposed to be really, the real hardcore, say something like, well, if you have to drink milk, raw goat's milk is preferable. I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, no, it's no milk from an animal is never. It's not preferable. It's so it's a a strange phenomenon there.
Well, it's that my greatest mentors, Arnold Ehret and Dr. Norman Walker. And Dr. Norman Walker, and he had it dialed in too, and he really followed in the footsteps of Ehret in the work that he brought with the juicing, and combining those two has been phenomenal for my life. 26 years doing this, and I think I've done every cleanse there is out there. I did the herbal ones, and the master cleanse, and the fruit cleanse, and the green juice cleanse, and the water fast. And the funny thing is, even doing it 26 years and average 4 times a year, I still go deep. This last one, I couldn't believe I was throwing up during this cleanse. It was only 7 days, and I was throwing stuff up. I don't even know what it was. My body's just. Our bodies, it's incredible. I know Brother Ayers talked about how much we accumulate before we start this journey, and I just can't believe 26 years, and I still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, it's such a journey, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about your relationship with the Juice Man, with Jay Cordish, the father of juicing. When did you meet him, and then start kind of working with him as a partner?
Yeah, that was, I did some work first with Dr. Will Tuttle, he wrote the World Peace Diet, and that's kind of how I escaped the 9-to-5 and started doing work in this space. And he's in the vegan movement, and I created some online programs with him, and we became 50-50 partners. But then as I got the book deal for Complete Idiot's Guide to Juice Fasting, which was about 8 years ago now, that's when I reached out to Jay and Linda, and I was like, hey, I'm a big fan of your work, Jay, and I'd love to take what you've done and create a school of juicing. And we'll call it the schoolofjuicing.com, and we'll take your life work. Because here he was in his late 80s, and there was really nothing online or anything. So, and they had a huge library of videos and lectures and audio books and all these things he'd done. And so they came in as 50-50 partners, and I took his work and I made it all digital. And then I interviewed him, and we did a 5-module series as part of the School of Juicing, where we went deeper into his work. And, and then we lost him, I guess, about 3 years ago, and Jay lived to about 93. And but his work lives on in the School of Juicing, and I gave it to Linda. I was like, here, do with it whatever you want. I'm going to use it as part of my certification for people to learn from Jay, and you can just sell it and make money on it. And that's how we parted ways. But and I did meet him in person. We went to some dinners together and things like that, and he was just a great inspiration to be able to work directly and get to know him. He was just an amazing guy. Really passionate. And he started with Max Gerson. Dr. Max Gerson cured him of cancer when he was in his 20s. He was a football player at UC Irvine or UCLA out here, and he ended up getting cancer and cured it through the carrot apple juice. And all these doctors talk about fruit juice being so bad for the body, too much sugar, or the hybrid carrots, or everyone gets so off base with what we should be doing with juicing, and we continue to try to provide the right information.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. And I'm real happy that you are doing that work to, anytime we take figures, because I don't even see a whole lot of us that really try to put the work out there of, great authors or great folks that had put information forward and say, like, this is a legacy, we're trying to bring this and keep this going. It's like a lot of people they're into the self-aggrandizement of, like, look at me, I'm brilliant, this is all my information and this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, it isn't. You got all that from other places. And and you're not true. Honoring. It's like let's honor the past, honor the people that came before. Nothing wrong with that. And for some reason that's not the kind of mentality that a lot of folks have in this field. But I'm glad you do, because I think that's great. And now one thing I wanted to ask is talk about different types of juicers and what are the pros and cons of different types of juicers, and what would you recommend somebody that maybe doesn't have a ton of money but they want to get a good juicer, they're starting out, what would you recommend that they get?
That's a good question. So, I mean, if you go to a juice bar and they've got those high-speed juicers that blend really fast, that's called the centrifugal juicer. And that juice, it heats up when it makes the juice, so we lose some enzymes that way. But, that's a con to it. But a pro to it is we drink it right away. You have to drink it right away. Mm-hmm. It's like when you cut an apple and it starts to oxidize, it turns brown. It's the same thing with your juice. As soon as it cuts it up, it's going to start to oxidize. So a lot of people will make the mistake of juicing, freezing it, and then you can get harmful bacteria in your juice and get really sick if you do that.
Yeah.
So when you're using something like that, and that would be like a Jack LaLanne or even the Juice Man $99 juicer, those are centrifugal. Those are juicers that aren't the best. You get what you pay for with it, but it's better than nothing. And if it's all you have in your budget, at least, drink that juice right away. The cleanup isn't as easy as some of the other juicers, but that's the starting place, though. The centrifugal is just the one in the juice bar is a better version of the cheaper juicers anyway.
I see.
The next level up is like a slow juicer. So it rotates like 47 RPMs. We use the Slow Star is the one we like, and that juice lasts up to 24 hours because it's extracted slower. It's not heating up the juice, and it lasts a full 24 hours. So we can make enough juice to last us for 2 days. Basically, what we do is we fill a mason jar to the top. We'll put it in the freezer right after sealing it and put it in for about an hour. We want to get the juice down to 37 degrees Fahrenheit, not freezing, because then this could crack and it's going to kill more enzymes. But 37 degrees Fahrenheit is what they found to be the sweet spot. And then we bring it into the refrigerator, and it's just like new when we drink it the next day. So we do that with the next level up, which is the Twin Gear. We use the Elite Juicer or the Pro Juicer for that, and it's a masticating juicer. It's like it replicates the human chewing, the mastication, so it also uses magnetic and bioceramic technology, which is making the enzyme supposedly more efficient, more bio usable for your body.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know about that part.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of studies. There's some, but they tested the juice from there. You'd get the same kind of juice from a Norwalk juicer, only it's thousands of dollars. I say the Green Star Elite, which is what I started with, because at least it lasts up to 3 days like a Norwalk juicer, or the knockoff of a Norwalk, which is the Pure Juicer, which is a little less money and actually better than the Norwalk, but that's a 2-stage juicer. That's what Norman Walker invented, the 2-stage, where you grind up the vegetable or fruit into a bag, and then you put it through this presser where it kind of comes up and just presses the juice out with all this force. And that juice is really pure and clean. And again, that'll last up to 3 days too. So that's like the Cadillac of the juicer. And, we were sponsored by TriBest for a few years. So like they gave us all the equipment. But the reason we went to them was because right when I started, when I was 25, or, with juicing, or 24, that was the one I wanted. I always knew TriBest was the best back then. So I've been real loyal to that brand.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
But the key is, Professor Spira, cold pressed juice.
Yeah.
If it's cold pressed juice, it lasts up to 3 days or less. Anything beyond, like what you find in the store on the shelf, they'll call it cold pressed, but it's usually HPP, which is high pressure processed, which means they submerged it like 40 feet to make it shelf stable for up to like 30-40 days.
Yeah,
that's not the same, and that's not going to give you the medicinal healing quality of a fresh, cold pressed, enzyme rich juice, which there have been no studies on, which is why they're saying fruit juice isn't good. We went back, like you said, we researched too. We were like, why are these doctors saying it's bad? Why is Dr. Greger saying it's bad? He has a video on his website that promotes kale juice, that says that it helped people get off smoking, all these other things, and like, why is he against it? There was a study like that Julia dug up, and they did this study, and it was on fruit juice, but it was the pasteurized juice. They didn't use cold-pressed, enzyme-rich juice. So the study was flawed. It didn't relate to what we're talking about here with cold-pressed, less processed juice, which really is more like what we chew than anything. It's not as processed. We want to get away from process. We know the ideal food is fruit.
Right.
So fruit juice is great. We would never put, like, a lot of our clients come from the standard American diet, and we don't put them on a fruit juice cleanse or a fruit juice. Like, we find the green juice is more building, so we start with the green juice because then they're not going to loosen up all those toxins and end up in the hospital. And the other thing I should bring up here is how people break a fast, because I don't know if it was Ehret's book. I think Ehret talked about that in Rational Fasting when he talked about, and it was a juice fast. I think it was the lemonade fast where somebody ate a date and ended up dying because they were one-sided meat eater.
Yeah. There's those two case studies on that, in that section on how to break a fast, and it's their cautionary tales of what not to do, and people do it anyway.
People do it anyway.
But
people, like you see, people come up, they've been juicing for a year, and then they want to become celebrity stars, and they'll put up a channel, and they don't know the ins and outs. And that's why we did the certification, and because we wanted to teach people how to lead people with juicing the right way and bringing in the other doctors, even though I don't agree with a lot of what Dr. Cousins says. I don't agree with Dr. Brian Clement's saying in Hippocrates about fruit. Like, I can't believe how off we've become with how some of our doctors are educating. I'm not here to diss them, but I'm just saying it.
Well,
I'm sure it's confusing for people.
Being real, and that's why I always kind of steered clear of that direction anyway, and I understand you was plugging in because you wanted to get that, that's important for people to transition them into the information, because some folks, they have to see that sign of support from the, somebody that's been in the medical field and that kind of stuff. But we're kind of like, it's
right.
good.
Well, I have my master's degree in occupational therapy, so I'm a therapist, and I could put MS after my name. People love that degree thing. And so I've always sort of tried to find ways to do it without that, and just say, hey, look, this information is freely available for everybody. Take a look at it. If it makes sense to you, great. You don't have to have somebody, with a sign of have some study or a doctor say, this is what it is, because they tried to do that before with, and I won't say his name either, but there was a doctor that the Alvin Last, who owned Ehret Publishing after Fred Hirsch, and before he sold it in 2011, on his website, he had a few articles up from it was a doctor. I think he had went to Harvard, and he was a medical doctor, but he promoted and used Arnold Ehret's methods with people. And so, he kind of wrote some of his stuff was trying to basically use that medical type of viewpoint to support Ehret's work. And so it's like, okay, cool. There was still things he said that went against some of Ehret's beliefs and principles and that kind of thing. But I'm like, okay, cool, I understand. But it's like the problem there is that doctor ended up getting in trouble. And I don't even remember exactly what it is, but he had legal problems because the last time I looked him up, I'm like, what? There's like terrible stories about him and getting arrested and all kinds of stuff. So I'm like, that's not. It's like we have one doctor that's promoting it, and then that happens, and so I'm just like, right.
I'm like, all right, look, we got the information. The information's in the book. We're on our own, but yeah, it would be. Yeah, I don't.
When I started that certification, I was like, I brought in Dr. Thomas Lodi from Oasis of Healing because he's using juicing with cancer patients.
Right.
And I brought in Gabriel Cousins and Dr. James Sheridan, who was running Health Force Nutritionals at the time. And, and he was really an advocate of juicing. And so I was like, yeah, I just want to. And that's why Dr. Fuhrman, we call him our medical advisor. And people like that.
Right.
I do it because people like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I don't know, people like it, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't, what I'm saying here is, and I know you're saying the same, it's just, we are our doctor. We are, like, no one knows our body like us. We become our own physician, and like, we're on nature's operating table, and this is the road less traveled, and it's just so worth it. And I just say to anyone who questions it or is misguiding people to just try it for yourself and go deeper into this and get the stuff out, start getting it out, and your life's going to change. I mean, from a physical level to spiritual, emotional, and every other way that we can evolve. Ehret is just, he was just, I don't know. I talked to Julie, my wife, about that. I was like, I don't know if he came from some other planet or what, but that guy, man, he was so dialed into how humans should be living. He wrote the book on how humans should be living. I hate to put him on that kind of a pedestal, but I've experienced it, and I've tried all the other ones. I've tried all the so-called leaders, all of them. Yeah. I've worked with them. I know them, and I know what they're saying doesn't work. Yeah. I hate to sound like I'm just dissing everyone, but as someone who's tried it all and hoped that someone with us today, alive today, had the answer and realized that, I don't know why they get so off on a tangent in their own kind of thing, like, you know, with cousin. I am kind of bashing people here, it seems. I don't want. I told her,
I mean, not too bad, you know. You just
okay, I respect Dr.
objective, objective analysis here.
But I respect Dr. Cousins, but he read our book and he endorsed our book, but he said, I got to let you know that I don't agree with fruit juices. You know, he's like, I have to let you know. Yeah. You know, when I've had some of my deepest cleanse with just putting some lemon and apple juice together and just drinking that, and then even including herbs, and then finding that the herbs just don't work. Like, I think we can just get back to nature and not get so caught up. And I'm not going to say anything about Dr. Norris because I never followed his protocols, but the ones I followed, it was like, I'm having better results just getting clean from nature.
Yeah. There's definitely, to me, a reimagining and a reanalysis of how of naturopathy that we really can eventually get to, especially through the lens of the mucus diet healing system. And it reprioritizes, because there's so many folks when you in the herbology side of it that they use that as a way to go from medical mindset and the addiction of taking medicines to, now I'm going to replace the medicines with herbs, and I'm just now I'm taking herbs. But you're missing the real fundamental part, which is eating your way to health, dealing with the diet.
Yeah, and it's kind of that fast track. Everyone always wants the fast track. This is going to make me clean even faster. But it took you a long time to get in that state, and it's going to take a while to get out of that state. I'm on 26 years trying to get out of that state, because what did I eat growing up? Man, I was eating cereal, Pop-Tarts, chocolate milk, pizza, Burger King, McDonald's, all of it.
Right.
I should have been morbidly obese. I was overweight and borderline obese, but I wasn't. I would have been, without a doubt. I'd be obese right now, and I'd probably be dead. Yeah. My mom died early, and I would have too.
Yeah. And that's the thing that it's hard for some people to understand. If they weren't sick growing up, or they weren't overweight, or so they start kind of going down the healing path, and they'll go through periods where they don't feel good, or they're going through the healing crisis or that kind of thing, and they're like, oh, this diet's messing me up. It's like, no, you're just your body is cleansing itself of all this old waste, and so welcome to the club. But for some of us that had these issues, it's kind of like, it's nice to know that, okay, this is the last time I'm gonna go through some of this. It's once and for all, because I'm not putting that waste back into my body. So, all right, I'm going through this elimination and move on with life. And because that was, for me, that definitely was self-evident, because I had been sick month after month after month for years of my childhood, and never, no matter what drugs they gave me or what I, what I did, it was consistent. And wasn't until the mucus diet in those first couple years, I was eliminating a lot of mucus. So I started practicing the diet, loosened stuff up, and it's like just a fountain of mucus is coming out of me. And some people, that would have scared people because they're like, oh, why are you, you're sick all the time. And it's like, no, I'm just wait a minute. Just give me a couple years. And after that couple years, that almost was gone for good. Like I just didn't have those kind of eliminations again. Even if I wanted to, it was like, that just didn't happen. And then very rarely, every couple years, maybe I'll have an elimination, and be like a day or two, have some, and they'll be very light compared to the old days, cold and flu-like symptoms, kind of feverish or something like that, do a couple enemas, lay down for a couple days, and that's it, and you're out of it. And with whatever they say is going around, I've been around a lot of people. I haven't got nothing yet. I haven't had no elimination yet.
Is something happening?
Right. Yeah. It's something, something's going on.
I don't even know, man.
Yeah. It's
but I agree
nuts.
because early on, like around the time I had that nicotine episode that I always, when I went to my media training and I was going to do my book tour or whatever, all that bullshit. But part of that, he was like, your hook is the nicotine out of the like you always have to lead with that, because then people are like, what, you got nicotine out? But really what I don't ever talk about is what followed, which was I couldn't go to the bathroom with a solid movement for like a week, and I thought I was dying. I was terrified. I ended up going to the hospital. I'm like, what's wrong with me? I called out of work. I was a therapist at the time, and I'm like, I mean I've heard about it where you could hit a major dumping like detox, healing crisis, and I know now that's what it was. But at the time, there wasn't a lot of people teaching or really knowing this part of it, and so for me, that scared me really. I backtracked and I started eating, a lot of pus forming food, like a lot of carbohydrate, like pizza, kind of vegan pizza and things to try to. I was trying everything to make it so I can go to the bathroom normally again, because I thought I was going to die. And they did a blood work and they were like, no, you're healthy, like you're like a young teenager with the blood work. Yeah. And so that confused me more. I'm like, well, what's wrong with me then? So that could really scare people if they're not ready for that part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, it seems like when I would work with clients that was often there, but it was like the easiest thing to deal with because they just hadn't thought of that. It's like, okay, let's get your enema bag and your lemons first, and then here's some, just like applesauce. I mean, get your applesauce and some raisins or prunes followed by the juicy fruit. Do that.
Oh, that
for a couple meals. You're gonna be good. And that's what we're saying. This is simple. It's like simple stuff. You didn't have to go spend $100 on a formula or drink some kind of elixir or anything. It's just like, just go. I mean, maybe, if you can find some organic, beautiful. Go try to get you some organic dried fruit, and you can either, you can make your own applesauce, or if you find some organic in a jar and you're not to that point where you're making your own yet, do that. Whatever it is. But yeah, that's
Well, Ehret had that inner clean, but the solution totally, even though he had that inner clean, which at one point I was talking to a manufacturer, we were going to try to replicate it, but aside from that, what you just said works way better than any herbs or any, like the prunes followed by juicy fruits works like nature works.
Yeah, exactly. And
not that herbs aren't nature, but I mean they're just they have to be used smartly. I don't know.
Yeah, the bow herbs. What I've found with herbs is that there are instances when you start talking about folks that have really bad adrenal issues or some of the thyroid issues or just basically endocrine gland issues. Sometimes they can be hard to get up out of with only fasting and with only the different, with juicing and those kinds of things. It's not impossible, but I've working with people, I found that to be pretty hard. when you look at certain herbs that have a certain biochemical response in the body and are attracted to certain glands or organs to do a certain thing, and this is just wisdom that's been passed down for generations of what herb does what, and you can experiment with it on yourself and kind of see. But once you with those really, and I'm talking about that chronic, that's why I don't just recommend or wouldn't just, that's the problem. They're just recommending herbs for everything. It's like, not most people don't really need that. But when you have these real chronic issues, if you know what to use, which ones to get, or how to synergistically put them together, or if you have some formulas of somebody that you trust and you check them out, but it has to be combined with transition diet and or the proper kind of fasting, depending on where that person is. If the person is too weak to really be able to deal with the proper fasting, or they might have some other issues, then you bring the food into it. But that's always a foundation and it's a very important part. And so that's one of those things that I have, I don't talk about it a whole lot publicly because like I said, I went 10 years where I didn't deal with herbs at all. And then I started studying them, and I kind of studied them intensively and worked with clients with them, but I never talked about it publicly. I was just like, well, there's enough people talking about this, but I found the benefits. Like I found the things, like the few times when it's really necessary, it can be real helpful to use. I've kind of found those times, and one day I'll probably write about it and that kind of thing. But right now,
I'm waiting for your transition book. I keep seeing coming soon this transition book, and I keep checking Amazon, and I can't find the thing.
Yeah, I kept falling apart on that one where I didn't. I'm eventually, I'm gonna get that because I actually have quite a bit of it was done, so I need to revisit those drafts because I had like the first half of it or kind of the introductory material done on it, and then things kept kind of taking me away from that project. Then with the e-course, I sort of did. It's not a menu book, but it was like, okay, well, the menus that we have in here, the recipes, I'll create a document for them and at least have the recipes there, and that's kind of, those would be in the book along with a bunch of other ones. But eventually we'll get that going.
just a little hint.
Yeah.
But I've had bad experience with the herbs, and I was friends with Dr. James Sheridan from Health Force Nutritionals, and they had the veganic wildcrafted herbs, and he had this extreme cleanse. I almost killed myself on it. I took his extreme cleanse because I'd been cleansing for decades. So I was like, I'm ready for an extreme cleanse.
Right.
And it was these capsules, and they ended up dehydrating me, and I ended up having to crawl down the steps of my condo and somehow get water in my body. I probably would have died that night. Seriously.
Wow.
That experience. And then this last time on my cleanse, I took the intestinal movement formula, and that kind of triggered this throwing up thing that happened. And I think it was the herbs that came back up, but I think it was more too. But also I thought, I don't know about herbs and cleansing. Like I just felt, I don't know about this. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like that those, because I haven't studied those formulas at all, and those sound pretty pretty intense formulas to have that kind of reaction. Those are.
Leave it to me to just jump in. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
I should have studied that before jumping in and just taking what they were saying to take.
Right. Because were they formulas that you bought, or did you make them? Did you go and
No,
get
they
the
had
herbs
it. Well, the Health Force had it was like a box, and they had movement formula and just all these different things to loosen things up, things to help things move along, and it was all different formulations. And there was like a clay kind of thing they called Earth.
Oh, well, there's the clays and all that stuff.
It was all these different things. Plus juicing. I was doing a juice fast, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to add these, but I didn't have enough liquid in my body to help move these things along. And they took it off the shelf after they heard my story. I don't know that how many people they tested it on, and I'm like, did you guys test this? And J-Myth, like, I don't know. They took it off the market after.
No, that sounds like Yeah. I mean, you have to drink a lot of water and stuff when you start getting into the clays and all that, which I'm not a real advocate. You know, Takora, they get into some of that, and you know, so we have some people in the mucus-free, you know, family that you know, that kind of get into that, but. You know, like Brother Ehret's perspective on it is he's always just like, well, just eat it. Just herbs. Go out if you're going to go outside and just grab some stuff, put it on your salad. You know, it's just if you can't eat it, if you can't just put it on your salad, you probably shouldn't have it. You know, you probably shouldn't eat it. You know, and so there's that. So yeah, so it's an interesting kind of discussion. I guess I've found it, like you're saying, for bowel issues. If you have some, like interclean is gentle, it's the formula that to me was sort of closest to it would be maybe Dr. Morris's stomach and bowel number 2 or number 3. You know, that would be in the realm of like an interclean level.
Oh, he was trying to replicate that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was his conscious goal, but he's got a bunch of them. He's got 1 through 5. And so 1 has absolutely no laxative effect at all. And then 5 is pretty close to being like an aggressive laxative, yet it's still not. They never get to that point where they're just like an aggressive, like the stuff you would take if you went to a hospital and they give you something that just clears you out, which that stuff is terrible. You know, it's dangerous. You know, but yeah, 2 and 3, it's, you know, it's just right in there. I call it a mover, just a gentle mover. You know, that kind of thing. But like you said, we have these different tools when you need them. But when you don't need them, you don't have to mess with them, you know. Well,
I guess the question is this. So when you're doing a cleanse, do you really need to be moving all the time? Or is it okay for your body to be taking a rest and just moving at, you know, like a lot of these formulas for when you're cleansing are to move things along, and you could take a tea with fennel or smooth move or something like that. But I guess the question is it really necessary? And I've tried it both ways, and I don't know that it really is necessary.
Yeah, it's not, and then especially if you're using an Ehret methodology and you're doing the enemas, which I know a lot of people are against, and a lot of those doctors are probably against that, but that's methodology that we use. And so yeah, if you're doing any different kind of juice protocol or liquid protocol, and you have the enemas going, whether you do them, you know, first thing in the morning or at night or whatever you decide to do with that, there's not a need, generally speaking, for those kind of herbs. You know, not the bowel herbs. Like I said, if you get a case of somebody that has some thyroid things happening or real low adrenals or pituitary, or once you get over into there, that to me is where studying the herbs and understanding which herbs can boost those glands, that's interesting to me, because I've seen that be very beneficial to people and very helpful. And to combine that for those people, not everybody, but for those people, to combine that with fasting, with the right type of fasting, or the fruit, because it kind of, it gives you that stimulation and that boost. And it allows the body a chance to cleanse while it's, while you're kind of energetically getting things moving a bit. So, but those are very specific situations. It's not like just everybody like, yeah, just go take this. And it's like, nah, that's like, you need to be working with somebody that knows what they're doing. This is the issue you're having. Because in some cases, those folks will have already tried juicing and the juice cleanses and things, and Ehret even talks about in his one. It's not a herb thing, but when he had somebody that had that just couldn't heal, they were fasting and tried everything, eating and transition diet, all that kind of stuff, and they wouldn't heal. So he tried something. He's like, well, let's see what happens, and that's when he took that lemon and juiced the lemon with the rind and all, it's like chopped up the rind or grated the rind in there, and had him drink that straight lemon with the rind, and that like that just did some work. That just,
wow.
And they were able to use that as a springboard to then heal. And so I look at that story as the kind of mentality that we can bring to this practice. So it's not so rigid. It's not real narrow. Like these are the herbs. This is this, or don't do herbs. It's kind of like, well, we have all these tools, and we just have to use our intellect to decide when is the proper time to use what. And to me, then that's the art form. That's the actual healing art form part of this, where you learn to say, okay, well, go outside and do a sun bath just for 25 minutes and then come back in. It's like having that kind of specificity to say, it's like, okay, well, change your enemas to the night. Stop doing them in the morning. That is just these kind of changes and tweaks. You can get real far with them. And so with people so preoccupied with what are you eating, or with, like you've been talking about, the herbs and that kind of stuff, when you start really looking at the nuts and bolts of what we're doing and how much one little shift can totally transform what you're experiencing and what you're doing. Just something as simple as, well, let me eat my salad in the afternoon and I'll have my fruit meal in the evening, and that systematic change, it can totally change everything. And so I think we're not really exploring, people outside of our camp aren't necessarily exploring all of those possibilities before going and resorting to the easily packaged, kind of cleanses that they were talking about. And but that's one thing that we're really trying to do, to get people to get a little deeper into into the transitions. That's what it's all about to me.
Well, the enemas are a spiritual, they're a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I was trying to tell my stepson, he's 13. He's just graduating from 8th grade now and going into high school. And I'm just trying to tell him about enemas, and they all laugh at me. My wife laughs at me. I'm like, no, you've got this belly here, and you have to understand that you've got to get that out.
Yeah.
And he does laugh at me because that's what kids are going to do today. But I'm just trying to plant the seed. And I keep saying, when you're ready, this is the book to read. Mm-hmm. It's not my books. I want you to read Arnold Ehret. I want you to read the Mucus Diet Healing System right here. It's when you're ready. And my wife has made an agreement to read it because I want her to understand why I'm doing this. And because it is the road less traveled. And even if we're in it alone in our family, I think it's important they understand why we're doing this. And if they decide to do it, then again, we're our own healers and we all make that choice. Yeah,
most definitely.
So I'll just put on some Miles Davis or some, John Coltrane, and I'll do that enema. And like I say, it's a gift and it's a spiritual practice, and it's incredible what we do when we get out of the way, what our body will do to heal. Like when we cut ourselves, it heals. We don't wonder why our body is that miracle. When we get out of the way and we put the right things in, like water and juice, fruit juice, to clean out, and do the enemas to clean out both ends, which I probably heard it from you. I said to Eli, I'm like, you take care of your mouth and you brush your teeth and maybe you scrape your tongue. Why aren't you taking care of the other end?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I heard you say that.
Yeah. Where it's like, you're brushing your teeth and you see the mucus that's on the tongue where your tongue is connected to your colon. It's one long tube, and so.
Well, because as a man, they think it's people don't like to talk about that, first of all, and secondly, it's why they could think maybe they would think I'm enjoying putting things in my ass, for example.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's just this taboo, and it's like there doesn't have to be a taboo around it.
No,
it's just hygiene. It's good hygiene.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing, because people are so touchy about it. It's like, but would you rather do that or would you like the experience of a of some person, changing your bedpan, as you laying in the hospital and
right.
You can't.
Oh, that's a good one.
And that kind of stuff is etched in my mind since I grew up, my mother real sick. And that was, that's just, so all these, how many times a day, and, you had to hit the button, the nurse comes in, they have to, or that sometimes they'll have one nurse or two, and they like kind of roll you up, put this pan under you, roll you back down. It can't be comfortable. Then you're supposed to go to the bathroom, laying in the bed like that. They, and they kind of cover you up a little bit, and then they 10 minutes later, they come back, roll you back over, take it, they wipe you, and then, they go and dump the waste in the bathroom. Is that preferable? Because that is the direction that you're going. If you don't want to take this into your own hands, take your health into your own hands and do something like this with the enemas, get yourself cleaned up, then that awaits you. And so, I would get over, for the people that feel like that, I would get over that taboo real quick, because I would much rather be doing my own enemas than to have somebody changing my bedpan every 2 hours or 3 hours. And
the first step the first thing we embrace is this idea that we are sick even if we think we're healthy, that by being constipated we know right away our state of health. And I'm saying, when I fell off and was eating some tofu, it wasn't the worst thing, but it totally constipated me right up, and so then I'm like, well, how many meals is backed up in here? And so when I pass that on to him, and he's in 8th grade, and I say, how much are you going to the bathroom? I'm not saying even if you're going once a day, you should be going 2 or 3 times a day if you're operating properly. And if you're not, then the solution is you got to start doing the enemas and eating the right foods and cleaning out. And then we can get started, right? Then we can get started to really talk about health. Yeah.
And what kind of stuff does he eat? I guess just at school, and is he a little better than other kids, or is he still kind of getting into
we got 50-50 custody. So when he's with dad's making him catch up on all the meat he misses out in our house. Okay. So he's inundating him with burgers over there, and then he comes here and he's constipated, which he tells us, and then my wife makes him a juice, and she makes him a salad, and then gives him fruit, and then he empties out. So he gets it. He sees it. He's living it, and he's seeing, well, at dad's I'm getting constipated. And this is a straight A student, so he's a smart kid. And so what's it going to take for him to say, yeah, I think Mom and Steve have it right, and I've got to say, Dad, I don't want to eat these burgers anymore, even if they taste great. Yeah. And so we don't put the pressure on him, because his dad is really forceful with his viewpoint and in making fun of our lifestyle too, and trying to disprove it to him. So we've got those uphill battles. But I think, the greatest thing Ehret said was what I said earlier, and what you teach, that, constipation is responsible for over 90% of diseases. And it doesn't matter what you call it, if it's in your brain or brain cancer or lung cancer or heart disease or stroke. And it's all from the same thing, from what's on the end of the fork to not taking care of our body. And as a society, we're so off base, and obesity is the norm. And I walk out my door, most people, even here in California, where everyone thinks people are more health conscious here, most people are overweight and obese and walking around, and it's accepted. And if you even say anything about it or use the wrong words, people think you're shaming them. And we've got to have an open dialogue about where we're going wrong, because it's like you say, it affects the brain, the violence, everything. It all trickles down to what we're doing and putting in our body.
Most definitely. Yeah,
I'm probably regurgitating everything I've learned from you on the podcast, but when I'm cleansing, I love diving into to Professor Spira Archives Q&A 1 through 15 or 1 through 12, whatever it is, and just listening to that wealth of knowledge just coming in as he channels it. And it's almost like it's what Ehret said too. Does it sound rational? Right, what they're teaching you or what's popular, none of it sounds rational. It's all jargon and BS, and and people are just jumping on the bandwagon. So hopefully more people wake up, right, Professor Spira?
Definitely. That is, that's the idea. And I think, there's we're at a period of great movement right now in the society. And, there's a lot of different opinions and people are riled up and, opposition and stuff. But what I see is a healing crisis that was inevitable. And so you can take advantage of this time, or you can not, and just sort of be mad or scared or whatever and just kind of, and waste the opportunity. But this is, there's an energy because, healing, there's an energy there. There's a, movement. It's about getting things moving, getting the blood going. It's not stagnation, it's not just sort of, sitting around and, it's like, nah, we're getting this thing going, freedom, body is about freedom, when it's working properly, it's total freedom. I mean, the body is the blueprint of what it means to either be free or imprisoned. And when you can understand that, then you can better understand what's going on outside today, and around the world right now, where there's folks are starting to feel that, they're kind of feeling that little bit of like, yeah, let's get this moving. So now what they need is mucus diet healing system. That's what any movement, and I say historically, just going all back to any kind of righteous protest movement or anything like that, the missing link has always been the physiological liberation aspect, physiological understanding, and that has to be a part of the movement, because if it's not, then we're going to end up having the same cycle over again, because historically there's always, no government is impervious to being shut down and changed, and no one thought that that the Roman Empire was ever going to end. Those folks at the end of the Roman Empire, they must have thought that the world was ending, because they never could have imagined that that had been powerful for almost 1,300 years, that was going to end and there was going to be something else new coming in. But it happened, and so we have to understand that there's nothing new is really happening. The one thing that is new is the potential of the mucus diet healing system, like what that would do. If you had people around the world with this kind of energy that started to take a look at mucus diet, because that's why we always say mucus diet is like, this is the most revolutionary lifestyle that you can get into, because it's that kind of energy is often needed. And I was talking earlier today with someone about dealing with family members, and you're living with somebody else, or might have a partner that's making bacon in the morning and stuff, and you're trying to do the diet, how you deal with that. And there's a mentality you have to have. You can't be, you have to grow spiritually enough to not care so much about what everybody's thinking about you, and it's it's easier said than done, but it's part of the work that we have to do, on the mental side and the social side. And so that's, but I don't know, what do you think of what's happening right now?
You bring up a good point, because when this first started, and when they start with this lockdown here in California, because they started with us first.
Yeah.
They started with 2 weeks. We're going to take away your freedom for 2 weeks.
Right.
Which we knew wasn't true. We knew like this was the beginning of something even more serious. And then from there, I got into a depression from it. I was like, I think we were going to do a podcast. I was like, I'm not in the right mind space to even do this.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, other people might relate to this, because this diet really makes you awake and aware. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to numb myself, and that didn't mean go back and eat hamburgers again or any of that.
Right.
But I did start the pus or the mucus foods.
Yeah.
Because the meat is more like the pus.
The pus,
mucus, the starchy foods, right?
Right.
So the potato or the tofu, the stuff to numb my mind, really.
Yeah.
And as a result, got constipated,
Mm-hmm.
and then realized and started feeling sick. And then it was and that day I was like, I told my wife, I'm like, I'm going on a cleanse tomorrow. And I just started cleansing and enemas and emptying out and getting clean and getting clear and coming off and now being mucus free and being aware, and realized in this that being aware through this is the most important thing. And to numb during this is putting your head in the sand, really. It's happening whether you put your head in the sand or not.
Right.
So I felt like the thing to do was this is the time to fast. At the beginning, I was like, are we going to run out of food? There was all that fear, like, these lines outside the health food store and getting in there, and the shelves are stripped away. We couldn't really find fruits or vegetables. We were hearing you have to boil them. And then I was like, they're trying to make it so we can't even eat raw food. Like, how are they going to tell me I have to boil my fruit and vegetables now? And which was part of why I spiraled like this. I can't live like this.
Right.
Like, this isn't the world I want to live in. And so getting clean and then coming up with now in the uprising, like you're talking about, that people have had it and are waking up and aware. And then, and then on one hand seeing that, and on the other hand seeing the misinformation, the lies, the propaganda, like you said, all that to confuse people even more. So less people are maybe standing up and more people are staying asleep. So I totally agree with you in saying that this diet is the key for right now, for becoming more aware and to reclaim our freedom. Our freedom starts with ourselves. So if I can get my body free and not have to, be sick or live in fear of walking out my door and being shamed for walking down our street like we are now. If my wife and I are even walking our dog in the neighborhood, people are shaming us for not wearing a mask. So there's this, people spitting in people's faces over that.
Wow, really?
This division.
That kind of defeats the purpose. That's happening.
Yeah.
Wow, I haven't heard too many of those stories because that's not happening here.
There's things happening everywhere.
Yeah, that's intense.
But to answer your question, for me, this has been the solution for everything. And as someone that's tried every diet from vegetarianism, veganism, I guess it's a form of paleo when I was a bodybuilder in my early 20s and working out and reading the Joe Weider fitness magazines and wanting to get the big muscles and to trying, I guess, every diet there is, to raw food for a few years, to the mucusless diet combined with the rational juice fasting and water fasting, and that is the solution to everything. It was all there from the 1900s on, and we've got it right here available to be kept alive now thanks to the work you're doing, and that we can carry, and I can carry on the work of Dr. Norman Walker.
Yeah, most definitely. And so
that was a bit of a rant. Why? What do you think?
But this is the real. I mean, this is the real message, because this is what people need to hear and understand, because this is a real opportunity, and I'm disheartened by a lot of the things I'm seeing in my Facebook feed with the recent stuff, and it's like folks are not really putting it together, because there's so much of this weird, all these weird conspiracy theories and this and that, and it's like they're coming to do this and that. I'm just like, look, what I want to tell all those people is you need to go spend a long time studying history, because there's nothing new going on right now. There's nothing that's outside of it's like I try to like I was saying, because there's one of the conspiracy theories is that this has been manufactured and it's going to try to create this civil war. And what they're missing is like, a lot of us that are people of color, we're like, well, good, because we've been in a civil war for 600 years. Nothing that you could imagine of whatever you think they're going to institute, or that, is anywhere near as bad as what has happened over the past 600 years. I mean, it's just, so if this is going to be some kind of great thing that's happened, it's like, well, what about those 400 years of slavery? And we're not talking about slave, there's people say, well, the Romans had slavery, wasn't that bad? There was nothing on earth like the kind of slavery that happened in the United States. And so, like, well, and then when it ended, people think that folks just was able to go and, slavery's over. No, it's not. Because what were those folks going to do? They didn't have anywhere to go. Economically, they were unable to largely make a living somewhere, so they became sharecroppers, or they were arrested. And that was the beginning of a prison industrial complex of free labor that continued. So people do have to understand, I mean, this society was built on free labor. And so there's a reason why we were able to industrialize the way we were. We were able to innovate, because there was a number, you were people that were able to become engineers and study and do these inventions on the backs of people that weren't getting any money, that were being dominated. And so, I mean, and I can talk about this historical context forever, but just to put things into perspective, there's nothing, nothing's going to be worse than, Germany for Jewish people in the 1930s to 45. I mean, that's hell on earth. And so, so unless they're saying, well, that's what's going to happen, well, I'm not seeing that. What I'm seeing is people are standing up, and the bullies that are trying to harm peaceful people that are just trying to express themselves, they're backing off. Like, okay, maybe, because they're being made to look a fool on the national scale, on the international scale. And that energy, because people are feeling that all around the world, where they're like, look, what Martin Luther King said.
Luther King.
Yeah, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so, and what I try to explain to people, because I know some people don't understand this, because they're seeing, I got my videos, I'm going out to the protests, and I'm letting my voice be heard. And I know I'm losing some people because they're like, wait a minute, and they don't understand that this is an act of love. This is what love looks like. Sometimes it has to look like this, because you're fighting for freedom. It's about liberation. And every once in a while, because for the people that were saying that this was some kind of, those were actors and nobody really died, that the thing is, okay, well, what about all of the?
Oh God, I didn't even hear that.
The other time, it's nutty. It's there's some nutty ones out there, and it's like, the thing is, every once in a while, something is caught on tape, or there's a story that moves the nation or can move the world for whatever reason. This is the one. Tamir Rice wasn't necessarily the one. Trayvon Martin, the other dozens and hundreds of people that have had their lives ended by
MLK. Martin Luther King was the last really big one, right? That was the last trigger that evoked an uprising, and that was what?
Well, they were in the midst of the uprising at that point, but that was the peaceful, right. And there was a lot of other organizing behind the scenes, as far as bunch of, because that's the thing. A lot of people see the folks that were out front, but there was so much more going on in the back. There are people that were trying to do legal issues. Hold on a second. There's let me go talk. Was
that that was a knock, wasn't it?
Yeah, hold on a second. But basically, how behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on than what people see up front. In terms of organizers, people, because that's an art form, and that I really respect, and I've studied it and looked into it, and the people that know how to do it, and when it's done well, it's beautiful, because you have a person that and they're usually like persons that are really can communicate well with people. And if you can see, like, okay, there's all these churches, you're looking at building coalitions with communities that are already put together. So you have, churches, you have other kinds of, private membership associations and clubs, and a good organizer can kind of look at the field and say, okay, what kind of common interest can I bring to the table and bring all of these folks together? And that was what was happening in the 60s. You had with the churches and, all these different groups coming together, and there would be different waves of intensity. So you had the Martin Luther King path, but then there was also the, Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam, and, but they both needed to be there, in my opinion, to ultimately get things moving the way that it was. But of course, once Martin started really talking about economic justice, and it was one thing when he was talking civil rights, now he's talking about economic rights. He didn't last too long after that. Some of his late, he sounded more like what the Black Panthers were talking about some years later, where there was a focus on economics and economic justice. He sounded more like that toward the end of his life before he was assassinated. And so, and then what I always tell folks is to study. There's some great documentaries on COINTELPRO. Study Cohen. If you're somebody that really likes conspiracy theories and you want to really dig deep into some real stuff that definitely happened, that is hard to believe, check that out. Check out the COINTELPRO, because that's the kind of thing that's really going on, that I'm not seeing anybody talk about, because they're preoccupied with this weird propaganda. But that's the thing. It's like, this is a moment where we can, where a lot of cleansing can happen. A lot of cleansing, a lot of healing. But you have to understand that historical context and what we're dealing with to really, I think, really understand this moment and how deep this is right now.
Oh, well, a country built on blood. It was sooner or later this was gonna. It's like a bad foundation.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's inevitable, and but yeah, we like you said, we could talk about this for hours and hours, but we'll go ahead and come to a conclusion here. But I really want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was episode 21, and everybody check out Steve's website. We got you got your courses. I'll put links down below for all that stuff. You have your courses. Tell them about your radio. Have the new radio show, a radio series, the Juicingpreneur.
All right, we got the Juicingpreneur. We've got Juicingpreneur Radio, which you were on both shows.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We've got both of those podcasts up, and you guys can get a free juicing chart at juicingchart.com. That juicing chart we used to sell for a few dollars. It's free, and it's awesome. It's really everything you need to know about picking a juicer. It's got juice recipes, juice fast recipes, and it's just a great starting ground. So if you're interested in getting the juices in your body, that's a good place to start.
All right, beautiful. So yeah, check all of Steve's stuff out, and hopefully we do this again soon on one of our platforms, on one of our two, and keep the dialogue rolling. So I thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Professor Spira. Thank you for bringing me on.
All right.